Good morning, everyone. Kate Bora and Fiona Pearman joining you for this week's Facebook Live, our last on the topic of psychosocial safety fee. And so far, we've talked about what is it and why it matters, what gets in the way. And the last couple of weeks, we've been really digging into the how-to for individuals, how-to for leaders. And today, we want to talk about the role of organisations. And I think one of the most profound things we've seen, Fee, in the work we've done in organisations, particularly in the last 18 months, is just the incredible value and impact of creating space for individuals, for leaders to slow down a little bit and to just reflect on themselves, reflect on their behaviour, reflect on their choices and make some decisions around how to do things differently.
I think this is where the magic happens because it is so rare. We've got such long to-do lists. There's so much pressure. There's so much pace, and all of that can be good at times. But this lack of space and time to really consciously think about what's going on for me and my impact on others is actually creating, to some degree, some of the psychosocial hazards that we talk about. And the pattern interrupt that occurs when leaders slow down, when organisations foster enough time to have the conversations they're currently not having, the ripple effect is really profound. And we see this in our own work. Just recently talking with one of our Women in Leadership programs, and 4 weeks ago, we were in an in-depth conversation around courageous conversations, really supporting them to think about what they need to do to prepare, the state of mind they need to be in to have a courageous conversation, which by definition feels uncomfortable. And them coming back 4 weeks later and talking about where they'd been prepared to speak up, how they'd been prepared to engage. And even though it wasn't always comfortable, they were leaning into doing this because they'd be given the tools and resources and a structure that meant they were willing to call things out and to point out things that needed addressing, and to do that, even if imperfectly, in a way that at least was disrupting what had happened before.
Yeah, and I think the really exciting thing of that debrief this week was, and they were then going on to share that with their teammates and their direct reports, so paying it forward. So this value of investing in training and development, I think training and development takes all forms, and the value of just creating space for that individual reflection, the increasing of the self-awareness that we talked about when we talked about the role individuals can play in this is incredibly valuable. I think that leads on to number 2, which is increased confidence, employee confidence. We know that confidence creates courage. And one of the challenges with confidence is a lack of certainty. So, the role organisations play here is providing certainty providing certainty for individuals of the process, what will happen if and when they do call out bad behaviour or what is going to happen. I think the piece that really comes up for employees here is fear, like the retribution, the comeback on me, what happens if I do call out some of this behaviour. And so it's the fear that stops us or the fear that stops people from actually raising some of these things and either pushing on through with the hope of ignoring it or leaving the organisation without saying anything.
That lack of certainty and clarity around what's okay and what's not okay is often playing out at multiple levels in organisations. It can be in some of the formal structures, but it's very often in the informal structures, in the day-to-day interactions, which aren't always visible to everybody. And so we don't have a solid base in which to form the choices that we're making. Often people are left to their own devices. And this is where we see the importance of leveraging your values, of being able to actually, put a stake in the ground and say, these are the behaviours we accept and these are the behaviours we don't accept. And then that gives a really clear reference point for people. And we can tune into that. We can actually call on those and explain why something is unacceptable in this instance, not because they're personally bad or anything about them as a person is wrong, but more, this is just not in alignment with who we've said we are as an organisation.
Yeah, we've had great examples in the past, stories of clients who have been able to go into and have courageous conversations with their colleagues and say, hey, I noticed this in a meeting and, we have the value of respect. And as an organisation, we've agreed that respect in this organisation means and it doesn't mean X, Y, Z. What's going on, and unpacking that. And so, number 3, leverage your values, is really powerful, right? It gives a framework, almost bones for employees to be able to lean on to have these conversations. Number 4, listen to signals, respond to warning signs. I think the role of listening in organisations is increasingly going to become more important and more powerful. Things like surveys, informal listening. How do we actually get some of those messages up so that organisations can start to be a little bit more proactive? I think this takes various forms, and I think there's lots of cool things coming potentially down the tech pipeline that can help organisations with this. But our ability to really tune in, particularly when we talk about some of those invisible behaviours that as leaders and more broadly as an organisation, we may not necessarily see, but when repeated over time do really have an impact on psychosocial safety.
Absolutely. I think this piece around, if we can listen to the signals, if we do create those softer, quieter, safe spaces that people can speak up about things that aren't working for them, which does require usually a bit of slowing down, there is an alchemical response, and people will be able to voice what maybe they would have previously held back on. And that creates all kinds of ripple effects in terms of that sense of safety. And I think the key piece here is, number 5 really is, provide the resources, get really clear. And, this sits on multiple levels. Yes, there are tactical pieces. Yes, there are, as you mentioned, tech platforms that are supporting in these spaces. And there's just really overtly communicating some of the things that are okay and not okay, and basic frameworks, so that people have tools with which they can address things when they see things that don't sit right, that are causing pain and really discomfort for others. How do we address that, and how do we do it effectively and with good solid support?
Yeah, I think lots of layers to the conversation. Lots of things for organisations to get their heads around and to focus on, there's no question. I think one of the resources that's most available to you is all your employees, and that grassroots response. When we did a piece earlier in the year on risk, we talked about, every employee, right, is a risk, meaning risk making like machine, right? They're out there, they're able to, we are generally, most of us are risk averse. You've got all these people out there who can help identify risks, come up with solutions. Equally, in this conversation, all your employees are out there. They're all able to help support, create psychological safety in your organisation. And, we'd really encourage you to think about how you can leverage them in this conversation. If you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love for you to share this with a colleague or someone who you think may benefit from it. We'd also love your feedback. Feel free to drop us a note in the comments below. Head over to our Facebook page, hit like, you'll be notified when we go live every Wednesday morning. We have a conversation about something that's relevant for us and for you. And if and when you're ready to go deep with your relationship with core confidence, visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.